on a rocky hill overlooking the ancient town of Elmina and the Atlantic Ocean stands Fort Jago. It is smaller than Elmina Castle, quieter, less imposing, but don't be deceived by its size. Fort Jago was not built to house human cargo or to store gold and ivory. It was built to defend, to watch, to strike. Its cannons faced the sea and the town below, ready to unleash destruction on both foreign enemies and local threats. But Fort Jago's walls were not just shaped by war. They were shaped by betrayal, by shifting alliances, broken treaties, and the greed of empires determined to control the riches of the Gold Coast. This is Walls of Power, Shores of Pain, Ghana's Forts and Castles, the podcast series reimagined by a Ghanaian filmmaker. Today, we uncover the hidden story of Fort Jago, the watchtower of Elmina. Fort Jago sits on a hill known to the local Fanti people as Jago, a sacred site once dedicated to the worship of local gods. But the hill's strategic point did not go unnoticed by the Europeans. In 1482, the Portuguese built Elmina Castle at the base of the hill, the first European trading post in sub-Saharan Africa. For nearly 150 years, the Portuguese held Elmina Castle and dominated the trade in gold and human lives. But the Dutch were watching and waiting. In 1637, the Dutch West India Company attacked Elmina Castle. The Portuguese, secure in their fortress, thought they were safe, but they underestimated the hill above them. The Dutch scaled the hill of Jago and established a firing position. From there, they launched a relentless cannon assault on Elmina Castle. After days of bombardment, the Portuguese surrendered. The Dutch seized Elmina Castle and with it, control of the Gold Coast trade. So the Dutch had learnt an important lesson. Whoever controlled the hill controlled the castle. So in 1666, the Dutch built Fort Jago on the very hill from which they had claimed victory. Its walls were thick, its cannon positioned towards the sea and the town. From this vantage point, the Dutch could defend Elmina Castle and crush any local resistance.
They built the fort not just to protect the Elmina Castle, but to control the local population.
I stand at the edge of the fort's battlements, looking down at Elmina. The town feels small from up here, almost vulnerable.
Any sign of rebellion from the local people, any attempt to resist Dutch control, could be met with cannon fire from this very post.
Control, that's what Fort Jago was really built for. Not just to guard against the British or the Portuguese, but to dominate the people of Elmina. But the Dutch did not build Fort Jago alone. They used African labor, forced labor, to construct the walls and position the cannons. And they did not build it without local alliances or betrayals. The Dutch forged ties with the Fanti and the Kwaku kingdoms, trading firearms and European goods in exchange for gold and captives. But these alliances were fragile. The same local leaders who supplied enslaved people to the Dutch also watched, waiting for a moment to turn the tide. In 1781, the British seized Elmina Castle during the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War. Fort St. Jago remained under Dutch control, but its power was weakening. By the 19th century, the British had overtaken the Dutch as the dominant colonial power on the Gold Coast. Fort St. Jago, once a symbol of Dutch dominance, became a relic, a fading shadow of colonial ambition. Fort St. Jago never became a center for Atlantic slave trade like Elmina Castle or the Cape Coast Castle, but it stood watch over the trade. Its cannons protected the routes that carried African captives to waiting ships. By the 19th century, the transatlantic slave trade had been abolished, but the scars remained. Fort St. Jago passed from the Dutch to the British. And when Ghana gained independence in 1957, the fort stood as a silent reminder of the colonial struggle for dominance over the Gold Coast.
That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
Today, Fort St. Jago stands as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a symbol of strategic power and colonial ambition. Visitors climb the stone steps, touch the weathered walls, and gaze out over Elmina. But Fort St. Jago is more than a monument. It is a watchtower, a place that saw both the rise and fall of empires. Fort St. Jago was built to protect power, but power is fleeting. The cannons that once defended Elmina have long gone silent. But the echoes of conquest and resistance remain. This is Walls of Power and Shores of Pain, Ghana's forts and castles reimagined by a Ghanaian filmmaker. Next time we travel to Christiansborg Castle, where a dramatic act of African defiance changed the balance of colonial power forever.